Sorry, Michelle, just anyone who's just joined us in terms of viewing the broadcast, if you'd like to join us and come in, please just send me a message. If you are just happy to view the broadcast, feel free to send questions through the Q&A, which you should be able to just send any old question you want. We'll come to that later on. What we're going to do is just basically as a workshop, just to examine how we go about supporting students, how we go about doing the whole NetNZ thing within a school. So it's really focused on what schools do rather than what the teachers do. And so what we'll do to begin with, we'll just go around and introduce ourselves, and then we'll go through a few questions that that everyone will share some of the things they do and strategies they use within the school. So I'm Darren Sudlow, so I'm the executive here with NetNZ. And I also teach, well, traditionally classical studies and history, but last 2 years, crafting history. So, Michelle, would you like to go next?
Yep, Michelle O'Carroll from Twizel Area School. I've been the eDean here for 5 years now, I believe. The students take NetNZ online subjects because we can't offer all the subjects at our senior school because our senior school has been quite small in the past years. I think this year we've got 22 students. And it's just a matter of we like to offer them whatever they would like, and having NetNZ available lets us do that. So,
what's your role? What's the role of Twizel Area School, Michelle? Sorry.
About 220 at the moment, and that's an area school from year 1 to year 13.
Okay,
so
what would be
20?
What would be the senior role?
Or in the year 11 upwards. Sorry, Darren.
What would be the senior role?
About 22 to 24.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, it'd be quite useful to give a bit of a school context because we actually got 3 fairly different schools represented here in a way. So the first is a small area school, and you were just talking about basically that it broadens your curriculum, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can examine that a bit more later on. So thank you very much for that, Michelle. And Marina, how about you? Oh, you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Marina. I teach at Rangiora New Life School. I've been eDean here for about 4 years. I also teach Level 1 Economics online. Rangiora New Life is an area school, a Christian school as well. Our role, I don't know exact numbers, it's around 400 from year 0 up to year 13. Our secondary schools probably about 200 and something, not terribly sure. Why we use NetNZ, but like Michelle, it broadens the subjects that we can offer our students and allows them more choice and more variety, and especially in areas like languages, my area, commerce, and some subjects that we just don't have the teaching staff for. So yeah, that's why we use NetNZ. No.
Awesome, thanks, Marina. So sort of a medium-sized school, special character school. Yeah, interesting you mentioned the languages. That's certainly becoming a bit of a niche area. Obviously, for many of our schools, some languages are quite difficult to staff themselves, so it seems to be an area of need. Of course, we've got all this whole Asian languages initiative going on as well, so there's a bit of a push for all that. So it's certainly a major reason to be using it. We'll come back to that why actually, but if we go to Anne Williams, if you want to introduce yourself, Anne.
Hi everybody, my name's Anne Williams. I'm the eDean at Ashburton College. We are a large rural secondary school of over 1,200 students, and yet we are quite a large user of NetNZ. We use NetNZ to offer subjects that aren't offered in our school, and there's quite a variety of those. And as well as that, we use NetNZ to allow the students to have personal choice of subjects if they have timetable clashes. And actually we're starting to realise what an advantage to our students it is to do an online subject. It really does prepare them for the future, using digital tools, becoming independent learners, all of those kind of things.
Yeah, so you're actually exploring some different ideas there, so it's not just about a broad curriculum for you. What was the school role again, sorry?
Over 1,200, and within the next 3 to 4 years, we're meant to head back to about 1,500.
Cool. And so, what's how many students you got online this year in NetNZ?
46.
46. That's how many have you got, Marina?
On NetNZ, I have 14.
14, great. So actually, sort of all three of these schools use it quite extensively, and sometimes for different reasons. And I'm interested in the whole idea of flexibility, etc., and not being tied by a timetable, which is obviously something that can affect students in a large school like Ashburton College. I mean, another thing. I mean, we've got broad curriculum and flexibility. I mean, are there any other reasons you can see for students doing fully online courses, doing sort of NetNZ type courses? Any other reasons?
I think Anne sort of covered some of those other reasons. I've noticed that, especially with my Year 13 students who are using it, they're developing some more independent learning skills that will help them as they head out onto university. They're sort of realising that the teacher isn't the be-all and end-all, and they're starting to learn some of those independent learning styles. They are a lot better at solving problems for themselves, a lot better at communicating. They don't, they're I've been able to encourage them to contact their teacher and have conversations with their teacher that are more learning focused for themselves than I've seen in the classroom.
Yes, this whole idea of a sort of a rich environment for becoming or developing autonomy, developing those self-management skills, and because you've got this, you don't have the teacher right there in front of you, so therefore the students have to think perhaps a bit differently. I would even perhaps be a wee bit provocative. I think sometimes we overemphasize or we put a lot of pressure on teachers to be the be-all and end-all, and students come to expect that they'll get help from the teacher anytime they want, and therefore they're not sometimes actually trying to work things out for themselves, or even better yet, do things together, work things out together. And I think this environment, they're forced to do that in a way. They still have the teacher to get help from, but often it becomes at a sort of slightly later time, or we usually say, within 24 hours. So it actually can be a very, very good environment for developing those independent skills we see. And that's why a lot of students talk about university, don't they, when they've gone through some of these courses and they see the benefits in terms of that. Is there anything else that anyone would add? I mean, beyond the students, are there any other reasons for doing this?
I think sometimes it can be a personality thing. If some students just want to do things on their own. We have a Year 13 student who's been taking NetNZ since Year 11. He took 3 subjects in Year 11, and I was really worried about that, but he did really well. Continued to gain in Year 12, and just, I think he doesn't particularly like so much his other classes now. He prefers to do all his learning online. He is prioritising, so I might see him and he goes, oh, well, it's meant to be this time, but actually I'm going to do this work because this needs to be done first, and then I'm going to do. I mean, that's exactly what we want them to do. That flexibility of knowing to prioritise, and just because it happens to be say a history slot, he can do his geography work during that time. He's just, he's prioritising, and I see that as really, really great thing. He's really grown so much. Then I have a Year 12 who it's just not working for him. He wants to be spoon-fed all the time. There's always a problem with it. He's not being taught this, not being taught that, but actually he's not using the Google community. When I look at his email structure, there's all these unanswered emails, so he hasn't even bothered to go into the Google community. So he's probably a student who actually it's not that successful for. He really needs somebody in the class. I mean, obviously he needs to develop his own learning and be an independent learner, but I think it's been ingrained so much from elsewhere that he's always been given the answer, it's never his issue, it's never his problem, that now he expects someone just to give it all to him. And so that's a real difference between those two boys who are taking this subject. One is flying away with it, and the other one, it's just not working for him. So I think it's a personality thing sometimes, and how they learn and that. So when you say it broadens their curriculum, sometimes they need to actually be in a class because we're setting them up for failure sometimes. That's the way I feel with this particular lad. Yeah. And I'd be interested if there's other ones in other schools like that.
Anyone like to add anything to that?
Maybe also, I guess I agree, Michelle. Some students take to it a lot more easily than others, but it's really hard to predict which ones will struggle. And sometimes a student you think is going to be really able to do this will need a lot more support than another student who just is able to manage themselves in their learning. Some of the students really enjoy that independence of having an online subject. And certainly I have some who come back for a second year and they're actually looking for a subject they can do that school doesn't offer, so they can do another online subject. And the other type of student that it suits too is a student who's very busy with, say, sport at a national level or something else that they're involved in that takes them out of school quite a lot, and they realise how convenient it is to have a subject that's available to them all the time. They don't have to rely on being in the classroom with the teacher. So, but you know, I understand, Michelle, every year I have some students like what you're talking about, and they need a lot more support. In fact, Darren and I have just been working with one, and now we've put a plan in place actually across his entire life with his parents as a result of what's been going on in online learning, but actually has been going on in the classroom as well. So sometimes a student like that is actually showing up weaknesses in other areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. We've got a couple of new people that have come in, so we'll just get them to introduce themselves. And we're just discussing currently, I mean, I'll get you to Jean and Linda to introduce who you are and which school you're from. Give a bit of background to your school context. You've probably been watching, so you're seeing what we talked about. But we're just discussing the whys of all this, you know, why do this with students and how we do it. There's a couple of things I really like to return to here that we're sort of getting onto about student readiness and student support, etc., which is quite interesting. But Linda, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself and Roxburgh, I suppose?
Hi everybody, Linda Walsh-Pascoe, eDean at Roxburgh Area School here. We've been doing, well, e-learning, like to drop the E these days, learning in this environment for a long, long time. We started on Blackboard many years ago, about 2001 or something. And we have progressively added to our suite of options from them. We've had students doing everything from equine, agriculture, languages, practical subjects like chemistry, practical subjects like mine, like physical education. And we probably wouldn't have a senior school, to be honest with you, if we hadn't have embraced NetNZ or the former life of Otago Net. In the early days. It's been really good for our students, both socially, because I've met a lot of other students, a lot of other teachers, and a lot of other ways of learning through doing learning this way, and it certainly has prepared, I think Anne mentioned before, about preparing them for their future, as most of our students do head out of Roxburgh for tertiary or work opportunities. So we have got just about all of our senior school from year 11 to 13 take a subject, at least one. Some of our year 13 students can take all 5 subjects via NetNZ, and yeah, we've used it a lot. And just behind me in the corner there, we've redeveloped our learning centre, so we've got little breakout rooms like this, as well as a bigger room where they all come and work with me when they're not online. So we have lots of support for them when they're not actually with their e-teachers.
Can I just suddenly had an idea, this could be a wee bit nuts, Linda, but I'd be interested, are you doing this through your laptop?
Yeah, I'll just turn off my wireless. Do you want me to go for a wee tour? The chairs are
we
all
might
up.
lose the connection a bit here, but I'd love to have a wee look. It might be quite cool to record it, because it is being recorded. Maybe you can take us for a quick tour.
I'll let Jean do her introduction while I go on a wee wander in a minute.
Okay. Jean.
Jean Little, Northern Southland College in Lumsden, and we've been doing e-learning in one form or another for a wee while. We started with Silk when they were going, and at that stage I was doing teaching agriculture, so I came in from that angle, and now we've got students this year and last year through NetNZ. All levels really, from year 11 to year 13, plus we've got one wee Japanese student at year 8 doing the pre-NCA course, and 4 students doing the Mandarin course, and they're all going really well and enjoying it. And that's about it, really. Yep.
Excellent, thank you, Jean. Actually, it's good. We've got quite a range of schools here. So we've got Roxburgh Area School, which we're going to test Roxburgh's wireless connection out here and have a wee look around, which has sort of got a purpose-built area, and it's such an ingrained part of the school. So, are you there, Linda? You're going to have to get quite close to your microphone, Linda.
Sorry, we're in the little breakout room.
Oh, we can see anyway.
Google Hangouts in here, and there's another similar room in the corner, and the student common room, like say in this area down the end there, where their lockers is right there. There's no room like class.
Great, you're making your way back now, you Linda?
I'm heading back. Actually, I'll go to this wee room because it's probably not quite so sound. They didn't put the soundproofing in that other room. This one's slightly sounded.
Should have a wee motion sickness warning on this, shouldn't we? Wandering around like that. Thanks for that, Linda. So actually, so quite a range of schools. Now, returning to this discussion we were having before, yeah, I had it in terms of students being able to take advantage of the flexibility and really manage their learning quite well. I mean, I have very vivid memory of a student probably about 4 or 5 years ago at a Mary Area School who did 4 courses online, and she was one of the brightest kids I ever came across, and she just flew in that environment. And she loved the fact she had large blocks of time with which she could organise her learning. She could decide when she did things. There's a lot of flexibility, and I'm always for students, if they want to work in the evening and use their time at school for an assignment. So I'm perfectly happy with that, as long as they've got the discipline to do things in the evening. It's when they don't do it during their school time and then they don't do it later on where issues come. And so sort of building on what you're saying there, Michelle, and what I'm really interested in is how, we'll get into this in a second actually, but we're talking about in a way dispositions, developing dispositions and attitudes in students so they're able to actually take ownership of their learning, to manage their time well, etc. It's how we get them to this point where they can, because what we don't want is just students in this environment who are, you know, the sort of duxers of this world and have already got the management skills. It's how we can support this in this environment while they're already here, and we can sort of explore that later on in terms of a question. And part of that is how much support a school is willing or able to give as well in terms of resourcing. So I think in terms of where we're going with schooling, I think there's going to be a lot of flexibility in schools and hopefully a lot more resourcing around the support of students and giving them, when we give them that flexibility rather than just leaving them to it. Would anyone like to add anything else in terms of the whys? I'm gonna break off. This is the only time I'm going to do this, and break off and just share my screen just briefly, just for a couple of reasons. But has anyone got anything else to add in terms of the whys of things? Right. So we've got this idea of broadening the curriculum, creating flexibility, and also providing an environment for students in which they can learn quite rich and important skills. We haven't talked about the teachers at all, and there's certainly some really very real advantages for teachers in this environment in terms of their own professional learning, and I would suggest that from that as well, the advantages for the school, especially when you have, say, 2 or 3 teachers like both Roxburgh and Ashburton do, who work in this environment, because you learn skills which you can take into your classrooms, your face-to-face classroom, which I think are really, really important. So if I just, hopefully nothing goes wrong here, if I just share my screen, and I'll check with you guys to make sure this is all working. Disappear. So, and you can see my screen okay there?
Yep.
So we've got to, this is sort of just summarises some of those ideas there, you know, this idea of a powerful environment, and also this concept of digital citizenship as well. I always talk about the fact that students are going into a world which, or much of their world is online, and I often use the analogy or the example of Facebook and how it's often used by adults, and in a not so constructive way, in fact, because they've never learned to be in that environment constructively. And it's so important that our learners, the students, as they move through their school years, learn these skills, because it's part of the world. Increasingly, we're part of the world. So you want students who are able to work in that environment really constructively. And this, to me, these courses provide that environment in a really safe and managed way. And so I think there's another reason. So there's a whole host there you could sort of lay on the table. Going beyond that, sort of, there's also this concept of schools changing and the way we organise schooling changing. And I think this idea of, this is a quote from Derek Weymouth some time ago now, where he talked about probably the Roxburgh area schools of this world, where it's not a bolt-on. So we haven't got a few additional courses for a few students that sits out there, and it's sort of disconnected to what the school does everywhere else. And I know that is a reality for quite a few of our schools, but where it's something that's actually more ingrained and built in as part of the school, that there's this whole idea of the flexibility or scale of things being online, where it's a mix of face-to-face blended and fully online. So it's just really an extension of what schools are already doing, rather than this additional bolt-on. So that's something I would throw in there as well. I'm going to put you guys on the spot here. Oh, geez, if I don't freeze up a bit. Go back here. This is sort of sharing some of our vision around online learning within NetNZ. So it does sort of relate to the whys to some extent. This here, it's got a sort of various things going on in terms of a Google Plus community and a Hangout, which we've moved to now. This is a sort of knowledge forum thing, etc. Is they're putting on the spot. So, but would anyone, in terms of what these pictures, images here represent, is there any sort of common theme or themes you see with this in terms of learning? Anyone like to have a guess what I'm aiming for there?
Connected.
Oh, geez, that's spot on. And you must be on the board or something. But yes, it's this idea of connections, and I think that's what's important about online learning. I don't think online learning shouldn't be an isolating experience. In fact, the internet, to me, is not all about isolating kids and just about information. It's actually about connecting people. So I think that's why I like this image down here, because you've got this little fella there and he's actually connecting to another person, or little fella on the other end, rather than content. This community here is about connections between students, same with the Hangout, and same with this whole idea we use the internet to connect students, not to isolate them. I think that's a really important part of where we're trying to take things with NetNZ and how we do the learning.
Darren, can I just add to what you were saying there? When you sent out our feedback recently as e-teachers, that truly came into what we were looking at. Because one of my students' feedback said that they'd like to have individual hangouts, and which sort of made me think that they considered it as as just me teaching them. And then, as you know, I'm part of the Knowledge Forum group, and I was thinking that hopefully that student has changed their view, because we've gone out of our way to make sure that each of the students in the Level 1 economics class is actually connected with each other, part of a learning community, rather than them taking the subject because they don't want to be in a classroom, they don't want to be connected, they want to have that individual learning. Because I think that's a danger, that if their focus is just that I just want to be an individual learner, do everything in my own way, my own time, they lose that fact that we actually do need each other to learn and to develop.
Yeah, that's a great point. The review is fascinating in terms of the comments the students put through, which I will share some of those. Sometimes they surprise you. A lot of students are quite happy to be isolated, to be working as an individual. Or we've lost Anne, and hopefully she comes back shortly. But it isn't not what we necessarily need from them as society. I think learning is a social thing, but that doesn't mean there's not room for the individual. It's the idea that you're able to work as an individual, then connect your learning with others, work within them, bring it back into your own thoughts, etc. And that's what I like about online learning, is you're able to dip in and out of that world in a way. And I think it's really important. Some students will be quite happy to be passive in a hangout and just sit there and listen. In fact, that's what some of them will expect, certainly if that's come through with some of the comments. And there's no doubt sometimes that's necessary from a teacher, especially prepping them and things like that. But the reality is we want to try and take the opportunities to connect them and connect their ideas, etc., as much as possible, because there's been a significant benefit in that, but also it's the way of the world. I don't know if you're seeing all the changes in the workplace and what's going on. There's little doubt that it's becoming an increasingly connected and collaborative world. And that brings challenges, because we don't want to be connected all the time. We need our time and space as well. Would anyone else like to add to that discussion at all?
Yeah, Darren, I'd just like to say I've done a lot of online learning myself as a teacher, and most of it was very linear. There was set out exactly what you had to read and what you had to do, and there was opportunity for posting online, but none of the discussion and none of the unique social side that we have through the NetNZ classes. And I think for our students, it's that level of connection, as Marina's saying, that they need, particularly as young, learners coming into a more independent learning environment. And I think, I know for me, I miss that social element in these other courses I've done online. And I feel I know for my students that that's a really important part, touching base with their teacher, touching base with their other colleagues in their class, those friendships, relationships. It may start small, but as they do this for longer, those relationships develop, and they meet students when they're down at tertiary education who have been in their classes or in sports teams or whatever the social element is. And I think as individual humans, we're not just little things that pour knowledge into our heads. So learning, as you mentioned before, is a social thing, and I think that's really important about the NetNZ courses, that we do have that element in our courses. Yeah, no,
I totally agree, Linda. Jean, can I just get you to go on mute for a second? We're just getting a wee bit of feedback from your end. It does happen within a hangout. But yeah, I do totally agree, Linda. I think it's important students get to experience that environment. That's why I think that these scholarship communities, I mean, there's no limits in terms of connecting students. There's no reason why you can't have English students across the country in an online community together doing stuff. But a lot of them are not used to that environment. They're used to doing the informal stuff with each other, and whether it's through Instagram or whatever it may be now, Facebook, etc. But to do things in a more sort of educational environment, it's not used to it. But personally, I've been doing online stuff like you for a long time, and as a student, I sort of I love going onto online discussions. I love face-to-face discussions as well. So it's just bringing that sort of environment for students. Anything else, Seal? So we'll just dip away and just keep it on. We've got half an hour. We need to get into the nuts and bolts stuff. But just lastly, I'll share my screen again and come out. There's only one other thing related to this whole vision, okay? And it's looking at a broader sense beyond just the students and what's happening in the courses, etc. But looking at the why of NetNZ in terms of a model, and Anne and Linda will know what I'm talking about here, a model for virtual education, virtual learning at a wider level. And it's not just us doing it this way. There are clusters in the North Island, etc. as well. And to me, this is a vision for online education in New Zealand. And it's, if these nodes are all schools, then, and you've got this sort of large organisation here delivering online education to these schools in a disconnected manner. Okay, so that's a vision of what could be. To me, this is what we want it to be about, and this is what NetNZ is all about. Of each of these nodes is a school within NetNZ. You've got the community here around the outside, but it's the idea that our schools become providers to each other. They're not just providers for their own learners, they're providers for learners in other schools, and we've got this whole connected thing going across the whole of the country, hopefully, but to some extent we've got that going already. And it's this idea that schools, and it's integrated within schools, they have ownership of what's going on, the significant benefits for them, and we don't have it sort of just provided by some virtual high school or something, etc. And that's what you see a bit of in the States, and I think this has got real strength, and this is, to me, is an important part of what NetNZ is all about. And it's just, I suppose, trying to sell that vision more widely and get some perhaps important stakeholders to take it on board. Right, sorry if I just come back out. We've examined the why to quite a large extent, so going into some nuts and bolts side of things. In terms of our students and our schools, etc., the question is, how do you guys go about promoting this with your students and within the school? So different times of the year, how do you get courses out to them? How do you get various information? How do they know about what's going on? How do teachers know, parents, etc.? Just wondering what sort of things you do to sort of promote NetNZ. Various levels. So if we go from left to right this time, so that goes from Anne and then through to Michelle at the end, and then we'll do that in the last question, we'll go from right to left again. So Anne, any thoughts?
Okay, there's probably a lot of things that I do to promote. Actually, I'm getting quite a bit of feedback. Is that me or is that someone else? Oh, it's right now. It's okay. Sorry. Okay, so we do use our school website. All the NetNZ information is put in our senior curriculum booklets and on our website. At the time of the year when students are doing course selections, I go to our course selection evening, which is really, really well attended by students and their families, and so I can promote it on that occasion to individuals and their families. At the time of the year when students are making course selection, I speak with all the senior assembly, A-level assemblies, and I promote it to them, explain what it's all about, tell them what the options are, ask them to come and see me to talk about it. At the beginning of the year, I'm always here a week ahead of the rest of the staff with the other deans, and we all see students and their families individually re-enrolling in courses, and at that point a lot of students come to talk to me about NetNZ options. So I do share a lot of information with the other deans in our school so that they know what's available, and also with the leadership team and with the staff in general whenever I get the opportunity. I think that's pretty much, and also of course students tell each other, so, and we can't underestimate that actually. If they're successful and they really like it, then they tell other people. So often students will come to me and say, oh, you know, my friend said she did this last year, can I do it next year? That kind of thing. Okay.
Yeah, word of mouth is a big one, isn't it? Where it can go both ways. If you get a few students having bad experiences, then it can snowball, but also the other way as well. So I suppose that comes down to ensuring students have a good experience, although nothing's ever going to be perfect. I suppose we just ensure that they feel as supported as they can through the whole thing. Sometimes it just doesn't quite work out, same as it doesn't quite work out face-to-face as well, and sometimes nothing to do with the online environment. I mean, and you said you got 40-odd students this year. I mean, why do you think it's so? You could put in more, I think. Could you?
Oh yeah. I've got to be careful not to oversell.
Why is it so many students are willing to take up, an online course? What do you think the key's been?
Oh, well, I think we've been doing this for quite a few years now, and students have been successful. So they pretty much know that if they are, willing to want to do it, there's no reason why they won't be successful. I think they quite like the independence. They really like taking subjects that our school doesn't offer. But also they really like the fact that if our timetable won't allow them to do, for example, economics and Japanese, then they're quite determined, a lot of them, to want to do their subject choices, and they see it as a viable option for them, whereas they're not quite so happy about correspondence because they equally know that might not be the easiest option for them. So yeah, I don't know, I think it's just something that's built up over the years and positive experiences, and I really strongly believe in it. So I believe in the idea of having an online subject at some stage of your schooling. I think it really helps them develop as learners. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing. You're a key to it, and also other people in the school. There's 3 teachers, isn't there, who are all sort of part of it, and leadership team are obviously fairly supportive because they've got to put in the resourcing behind everything. So all that together sort of makes quite a big difference. Okay, thanks for that, Anne. Appreciate it. Jean, would you like to share anything? Oh, you're on mute, by the way. I'll go on mute as well now. Yes, you're still on mute there, Jean.
Okay, now I think I'm right. We actively promoted languages this year, right through across the whole school, and we got quite a major uptake. Really, we got about 8 kids in the start, but some of them tried for a couple of weeks and decided it wasn't for them. For the senior part of the school, we don't really do any active promoting as such, but if the students, like with Anne, if they want to take 2 subjects on the same line, we just say, okay, then we can try NetNZ and work that way. We haven't got a huge number of senior students, so we have to realise that. I think we've got, around about 35 or 6 right from year 11 to year 13. So we work hard to make our timetable fit everybody as well as we can, and then those that it doesn't fit, we move into NetNZ, and rather than try and force them to choose from the lines that are there. And it's worked really, really well this year.
It's good to hear, but it's interesting how you sort of promoted a certain, I mean, you talk about languages, I suppose, so you saw something the school really can't cover, and so you actively sort of really targeted that with students.
We did, mainly because we've had students in the past who've wanted to start at year 11 and go straight into NCEA, and we figured that that's not very easy. So therefore, if we promote at junior levels, then we can have them ready to do NCEA in year 11. So that's why.
Excellent, yeah. Thank you, Jean. Linda.
Yes, well, we're like Anne, we have all the meetings and things with our parents, and we're a bit like Jean in the sense that we don't have hard timetable lines. Our students tell us what subjects and what level they would like to be taught at, and if we have the expertise here with enough students, we'll run a class, even if it's a multi-level class, and other than that, we do actually then use the NetNZ, but for many of ours, they may only be the 1 or 2 students. So this really does broaden our curriculum. We do have it as part of our Pathways book, so it's all in there, and the links there, so they can go and have a look at the website and see the details. I'm also the senior dean, so I do IEPs with every single student here. I meet with them twice a year, both when they're doing the course selection and again in January when their results come out, and we review their enrolments after that. So I have several times, if not every day, that I get to talk to my students and sort of counsel them and give them advice and guidance.
Excellent. Thanks, Linda. Marina?
Took me by surprise. I thought you were going for Michelle next. Okay, at Ring Your New Life, basically it's up on our website. I've just finished writing that up. It's in our course selection. A lot of my promotion actually happens by the fact that I work closely with the head of secondary and the timetabler, and so I'm aware of timetable clashes. I'm aware of students who want to do other subjects, and I go and personally talk to them and have a chat with them. I talk to parents contact their parents, have a chat with them, and basically do it that way. I don't make any promises. I'm a bit selective with my places in terms of we sort of don't give it to anybody and everybody. We really check them out first. So that's So a lot of it is bit like Linda, knowing who the students are and what they want to do, and sort of just being aware of that, and doing the promotion. It's kind of handy when you're a bit smaller. You can do that.
So highlighted, or we're getting highlighted here, the idea of also connections between key staff within the school, isn't there? So everyone's sort of communicating with each other and is aware of what's going on. So it sounds like, Miranda, you've got quite a good idea of what will be coming your way in working with the head of senior school steward, isn't it? So that would make quite a big difference, I'd imagine. Last but not least, Michelle.
Right, we do most of our promotion during our senior subject evening. There's a PowerPoint that I run. If anyone's listening and they need to run that, it's on the Google Plus community under the documents file, I believe. And I normally grab it and update it a little bit and then show that. And then the students and the parents have a chance to come and speak to me after that's run. They get to speak to all the teachers, and they just treat me as one of the teachers who does the online subjects. I'm also the careers advisor, so if they're interested in a particular area, then it's important that they're taking a subject that's relevant to that area. And if we don't offer it, then that's obviously I already know that, and I'm pushing them that way. Saying, look, this you might want to think about this. We're a small school, so we pretty much know our senior students really well, and that really helps. You can, you know where they're going to where they're going, or if they haven't got an idea what their level is, you can sort of push them in particular areas which sort of suit them, even if they don't know, for instance, what history is or what geography is. You can sort of talk to them and say, hey, look, this is what I think this would be a really good subject for you. So yeah, it's promoting it. We don't necessarily do it on our website, but we definitely promote it in subject evening. Once again, students talking to each other. We've been doing it for years at Twice Weary School, so they know about it, and some of them are really keen to start it because they just see it as like, wow, I really want to try that, and I think that's a really good idea too. I agree with Anne. I think they should do it, at least one of their subjects during their senior year, just to give them an idea of what it's like. Yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, they do that in the States, don't they? I think I'm not sure if it's across the United States but it's one of the states where the students have to take an online course. Not sure what I think of that, but each year, which is an interesting idea. I mean, this is a sort of question for both you and or Linda, just because of small area schools, etc. But what's the community perception of NetNZ, or what was before that CantonNet or OtagoNet? I mean, because we've been doing it for quite a long time, both schools. How's it generally viewed within the community?
I have to say, Darren, I thought we were a bit like Michelle, and all the parents sort of knew about it, but what I've realised just the last couple of meetings is that you have a new cohort coming through every year. And so while our senior students or senior parents have got perhaps an older brother or sister that have been through, are well versed in the whole thing of how it works, some of our first time senior parents, as I call them, are very nervous. In fact, they've walked past this room here and looked in and said, well, what goes on in there? Because I've had students in the junior school and haven't really taken much notice they come up. We don't have open days or anything at school, and it's probably something we need to go and promote more in our year 7 to 10 parents. So we're at our parent meetings this year. I actually spoke as well to prepare those year 10 parents for their students coming in a bit earlier than when the course selection evening happens later in the year. Because it did make us aware, even though we've been doing it for over 10 years, that our parents didn't necessarily know simply because they hadn't had students at this level before. So I think we need to continually promote it, even though it's well known for most of our board members and all of that sort of thing. I think we still need to keep promoting that students can stay in Roxburgh, don't need to go away to another school, because all the subjects are available here if they want to do them.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I don't know how well it's known in our junior school. Certainly from middle school upwards, they know that they have that option. Maybe the students do. Once again, I'm not too sure whether the parents know, so maybe that's something that we need to promote a little bit more. It's just I haven't really thought about it before because we probably concentrated on it more at year 9 and 10. You know, thinking about what they're going to take as NCEA subjects. However, now with the ability to do languages, we've had 2 year 10 students taking languages. So maybe now is the time that we need to be promoting it more, you know, at junior school to let them know that that is an option for when they get into middle school and definitely senior school. I think probably there's going to be more subjects online in that middle school area, Darren, would you say, in the next couple of years?
Yeah, definitely, most definitely. I mean, I think that's very interesting, this idea that you know, there's a new cohort of parents coming through and then continually educating them, keeping that going, and how we do that. I always, you know, there's certainly some parents, I've heard the story a number of times, less often these days, but where parents have gone in and said, no, you know, my son, daughter needs a real teacher in front of them, and sort of this lack of understanding that actually there is a real teacher, no, they're not physically in front of them, but in fact the level of support you can get from a teacher online can be just as good, if not better, than a teacher. I mean, I always remember my classes of, you know, 13 over in the senior secondary schools I worked in the past, and my classes, online classes, are, you know, maybe less than 10, which is not ideal, but 10 to 15, even 20. But it's I found that I actually can get to know the kids far more than I perhaps did in a class of 34 in a face-to-face situation. But anyway, anyone likes to add anything else to that before we move on to our last question with our last 10 minutes?
Probably a couple of things I've just thought of, Darren. I have put NetNZ stuff in our school newsletter from time to time. If there's been a visiting teacher or if we've had something to celebrate. So our school newsletter goes out in the Courier newspaper every week to the entire Mid-Canterbury community. So, you know, I've tried to do that. And the other thing is I do write a report for the board, which I modified quite a bit last year. Can't remember if I shared it with you in the end, Michelle, or not, because I know you asked, and I probably didn't, but I think it's quite good for the board to get just a summary of how the year's gone for the students. In a big school, in a smaller school, maybe not quite so relevant.
Thanks for that, Anne. Now, in terms of the last question here, which is actually a really, really important one, that's looking at actually how we support these students over the course of the year, beginning of the year, etc. That's no easy answer, because we would all understand here that different students need different levels of support, and the eDean's job is generally to give that support. It doesn't have to be entirely the eDean. Usually, you know, there's perhaps sometimes a group of people providing that sort of subject teacher within the school who's helping a bit as well. But it's how we go about effectively supporting students. Sorry, going back to what was said there before by Anne in terms of promotion, etc. There's those stories that we get out that are really important on an ongoing basis, and we are going to redevelop our web presence, website, etc. We want to actually start enabling these stories far more, you know, being able to sort of write up, share videos, etc. of what's going on. So look out for that, although, you know, they just have to fit in with many other things that are going on. But so supporting students, what do you guys do in terms of, and this is not just about eDean, in fact, how do schools effectively support students, and what do your school do? So I said to go from right to left here, Michelle, sorry, so you're not last this time, you're first, but would you like to go first?
Okay. As I sort of alluded to earlier, I previously had the students who, during their non-contact period with their e-teacher, they would be in my lab working away. and it worked exceedingly well. I knew exactly what everyone was up to, had lots and lots of contact with e-teachers. It was difficult for them to get off task because I was on task with them the whole time. With my timetable this year, I've got, just the way it's happened, I've got big middle school classes and there is no room for them in my lab. So as a consequence, they are in a study room. And there is a teacher with them, but I suppose as eDean I had ownership of it more, and this teacher is a new teacher to our school, doesn't know the students well, and you know, it's just one of those things that hasn't been as successful as what it could be. I think that if there is a teacher who's supervising students, they really need to not just treat it as a relief class, but it's got to be, they've got to take ownership of it as well. Now, that could be the senior dean, it could be the eDean, it could be even a senior management person who's just sitting in doing their own work but keeping them on task. And so that really has to change for us next year, because I feel that it's just not going to be as successful for those students this year. You know, sometimes you have years that go through and the students are all very focused and motivated, and other years you have students who go through and they just, everything's done 50%, you know. It might just be one of those years, I don't know. But certainly when they are being well supervised, they tend to obviously work harder. And saying that, you know, I also think once they get to year 12 and 13, they've got to start taking ownership of their own learning. And, you know, I go in and I see those students and, you know, sort of try and pull them back into line again and say, look, you know, this is your learning, you need to take ownership, you're old enough now. But they still need that structured support outside their e-teacher times. And so, yeah, it's something I definitely we need to be talking with our senior management to try and fix the problem for next year, I believe, yeah.
So I suppose there's a difference between support and support, I suppose you say. So just what we need, it needs to be active support where you're taking a real interest in the students and their welfare and helping guide them to some extent, and really rather than just actually a supervision type job where you're watching them sort of in a room on what they're doing, but not necessarily going in deeper. I suppose that links in quite nicely this idea of deep support, which we're trying to sort of develop this year.
I also feel that I haven't had anywhere near the amount of contact with e-teachers this year, and you know that you know, I do have some contact, but not a lot of contact, and not as much as I've had over the past years. And whether that's just they've got bigger classes and it's harder to maintain that, whether they feel that, you know, they're running it on their own and that's fine, but you know, even to the point of not knowing when assessments are due, you know. And I think to really support and help that student, the e-teachers need to, you know, really keep the eDean in the loop, because if I don't know an assessment's due, I can't make sure it gets handed in, or I can't keep encouraging the student, hey, come on, it's Tuesday today, that's got to be in by Friday, you know, how's it going? You know, if you don't know something, are you emailing the teacher? Are you in contact with them? You know, there's not those conversations happening if I don't know whether an assessment's due.
I know that communication between e-teacher and eDeans are vital. So it's just a matter of, even if you know, because of supposedly got the nature of online learning happening as it is, there's going to be less emailing of groups of students. So, like for example, I never email groups of students. Individuals I might every now and then. It's very rare. But you should be able to give updates to the eDeans reasonably regularly, just so they know what's going on, especially with respect to individuals, etc., but even in a group sense as well. And that communication is vital.
I mean, I used to, you know, I think I am a member of everybody's community, but, you know, at the end I've got to turn the notifications off because there's just so many coming through. so therefore I don't have time to go into the community and see what the latest post is when an assessment's due. So, you know, I don't think it's that dreadfully hard for any teacher to send an email out to the eDeans and say, hey, you know, because we're not necessarily watching the e-community all the time. We just don't have time. We all have other jobs. And, you know, as I said, there was just got too many emails. I had to turn the notifications off. But it would certainly help if they sent an email out and saying, oh, John wasn't at the Hangout the other day, what's happening? Or, you know, a bulk email out to all the eDeans saying that level 1 accounting workbook is due back in by Friday. I mean, that way we can help them, but if we don't get it, you know, I can't help them.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely agree. Wouldn't expect eDeans, most eDeans wouldn't have the time to be able to keep an eye on the communities all the time. And yeah, I always said that you want to turn off notifications, you'll get flooded with them. But that's why I think just an email update every now and then should be enough, and then correspondence on individual students where it's needed. I think that's absolutely important. So thanks for that. Michelle, Marina?
I do a lot of what Michelle's talking about. I'm lucky I teach where they do their Google Hangouts or in the old VC room is in my office. My classroom's right next door. I have a big classroom. I've got plenty of space. Even when I have my biggest class, there's still room. I made the timetabler. I forced the timetabler to timetable them into my room, even when I'm supposedly having non-contacts. I insisted that I would have them. That's made a huge difference this year. I have them, I see them. I actually, on the other hand, leave all my notifications on and just delete them. It keeps me in tabs because I agree with Michelle. I'm not getting the same amount of information, and some of the courses don't even have Google Community. So I'm having, you know, I've got at least one course that doesn't have a Google Community, so I'm having limited communication. But I'm not too worried about that because of the nature of the student, and also because his hangout is straight after my hangout. So if I've got any issues, I just catch up with the e-teacher in that time. But yeah, it is essential. I've just made myself a note. I've just got to catch up with some of my students who are having hangouts when I'm teaching, so I'm not got an ear in on their hangouts and catching up with how they're going. Certainly found it a lot better because if I'm not here and there's technical issues, they just give up instead of persisting. I even leave my class working if I'm teaching and go and sort out their technical issues to try and make it as successful as possible for them. Yeah, but that's a lot of what I do. And as a lead teacher, I do go out. I do hopefully communicate as much as I can to let students, let eDeans know, because I teach level 1s, and I kind of think that when you're teaching level 1s, this is a big introduction not only to NCA but to actual online learning. So I'm quite structured in what I do with my online class, and as part of that is letting the eDeans know as soon as possible when I'm starting to think there's evidence that they're not going to make assessment dates. I don't leave it to the last minute. Sometimes, for the last few weeks, they probably feel like I've been spamming them, but it's hopefully not. But yeah, this year also being able to select your students a little bit, being a little bit picky about the students that you do let on, not being too picky, you know, but sort of knowing if you let somebody on that you're a little bit sort of uncertain about their organisational skills, making sure that you actually wrap them quite closely with care and watching, and yeah, and so I found that sort of works for me. But yeah, like I say, I only got 14. It works when you've only got 14 to look after. Anne would have to have completely different systems for the number that she's dealing with. But yeah, so that's how I look after mine.
we'll get to Anne and Linda soon because yeah, they've got the big numbers. Oh, actually, in fact, we'll get to Linda now. So, yeah, how do you deal with a larger group there, Linda?
Yes, 1 year I nearly did have a mental breakdown. So to keep tabs on everyone. So what we've established here is what we call a mentor system. So every senior teacher who teaches in the senior part of the school has 5 students that they are to be touching base with, making sure, not just for their e-learning, for all of their subjects. So it's just a person that, you know, pops, most of them are teaching them for one of their subjects. So they just have a conversation with them quite regularly, but it's actually their role to check on making sure that things are going well for them. Their job is to then see me if there's a concern with an E subject, and then I get in touch with the E teacher. I have a whiteboard, which I didn't really show you in my tour, sitting right behind my desk, and every student knows that they have to put their due dates up there, and then I just pretty much hound them every day. If their name's up there or their subject's up there, they will get a daily reminder from Mrs. Walsh-Pascoe about, I have not had your document shared with me. So I insist that they share all of their documents that they send their teachers for any assessments, any emails they send their teachers. I get them to CC me into them. And that just means that that level of communication's there. They're not always good at that. They're teenagers. They don't do everything you ask of them, but that's the expectation here, that they do that, and it's getting better. One wee thing we've learned from early, you know, through doing this for a while, is we've now tried to make sure in our Year 9 and 10 programs that there is little things like just teaching them how to email a teacher as opposed to a friend. And the appropriate language that's required, that if you're asking your teacher nicely for something rather than, you know, a little I with a I haven't done my homework type email. We are teaching that in our junior school, because we recognise that a lot of the skills that we were expecting them to have, they needed to have from day 1 when they got in at year 11. And so they're using Google Docs, they're using email, they're using, some of them are even starting to use Hangout and other sort of e-learning tools, which is helping a lot as they come through into senior school. And I have a senior assembly as well, so I have another chance to give them a wee hoozle up if I haven't caught them during the week. But I'm pretty lucky. It's small. They wander past me. They get a gentle reminder or a much more serious talk if required. But I'm like Marina. I've got more in front of me, so it's quite easy, really. They can run, but they can't hide.
I like that, Linda. And you also, you've got this slight contrast with why it'll be interesting for sort of touch base with Anne, because it's a much smaller school. So it's sort of at a smaller school. It seems to be a bit easier to sort of keep tabs on students. And I like the mentors idea. And it's interesting, the whole emailing business. I have seen examples of emails from students to teachers that weren't that well thought out. And it can be vice versa in a way. It's that whole idea of when you put things down in writing, you can't see the whites of the other person's eyes. So sometimes the intent behind the email can be misread. So we have to always be aware of that, both as students and teachers, actually, in fact. But thanks for that, Linda. Very useful. So, Jean, have you got anything to add? Oh, you're on mute again, don't forget.
The only thing I had, I'm in reasonable good contact with most of them, and there's 1 or 2 teachers that aren't in contact with me that I have to email every now and again to see how they're going and get their point of view, which is the same as these kids because they're a couple of good kids. But everybody has to meet with me at the start of lunch on Mondays. It's a given, that's work all year, and we go over any issues then that we need to deal with. But otherwise, pretty much like everyone else.
Yeah, actually, that's an idea I've always been in favour of. Obviously, it's a bit more challenging if you've got 40 kids. You know, it's not going to work with one teacher, but being able to touch base with the students as a group or a group of students on a regular basis, I think would be well worthwhile, because you can just have those discussions about things and they can sort of work off each other. So I think that's a really, really good idea where it's manageable. Right, thanks for that, Jean. And last, Anne, I'll leave the last word to you.
Okay. Well, I guess my situation's quite different to everybody else because it is a big school and I have a lot of students. But I am quite lucky that our students work in the library. They have a dedicated area in here, and I'm teacher librarian. I don't know if I have such a thing as non-contact periods, um, but what I try to do is I have one period a week for each column of students, so that I try to make sure that every week I touch base with the students in each timetable column, if that makes sense. So there's 6 groups of them, and the numbers in those columns can vary from about 5 to about 12 online students, plus some correspondence students. So I have a kind of routine, and at that time I will go and talk to them and check out what's happening and stay in touch with them and ask if there's any issues, that kind of thing. So my students aren't supervised in their online learning times. They are mostly just with other students who are also studying. And for the most part, that works quite well. They support each other a lot. However, you know, there are always some issues, and this year I've got the issue of the very talkative senior girl who wants to gossip about her relationships. But actually other students have come and complained to me, so I've had grounds to have the talk with her just recently, and I think things have improved. So from time to time I'll sit up there and work with them if I think there's a bit of an issue. I do agree with the rest of you that there needs to be a triangle of support. There's the e-teacher and, there's the student, the e-teacher and the e-dean, and the more information I have from an e-teacher, the more I can support the students. So I do email all the e-teachers at the beginning of the year and ask them to let me know if there's anything they need me to do or any help or any support that student needs, and I do try and encourage that. If I think that a student might be wandering off the trail, then I will get in touch with the teacher. Subject teachers here at school are very good at giving support to our students if they need it, so I ask them. And the other thing is that about once a term I do an email check, so I'll send an email out to all my students. I'll say, how's it going? How do you think you're faring in your course? What kind of support would you like at the moment? Is there anything that we could change to make this better for you? So, and they pretty much all reply to that, and that gives me really good data as well for sorting out who needs what. So I suppose to the best of my ability, am supporting 46 students, and I have found it a lot more challenging this year because I still have the rest of my role. Probably I'm overworked. I particularly was in the first 6 weeks because I spend a lot of time with individual students in those first 6 weeks, just getting them supported in their online environments and with the technology and everything like that. And my library staff are incredibly good at helping out if there are connection issues. But yeah, so I guess that's what I do in a nutshell.
Thanks for that, Anne. I'm very, very tempted to send out those eDean guidelines again to principals with this video because it does reinforce how much work you guys put in, sometimes without the resourcing that should go along with that. And in an ideal world, I'd love to see almost a web of support in schools where it's not just the eDean, there's other people involved. Otherwise, it's a pretty tall task. And I find Ashburton is my base school, so I am in there every now and then. And when I do go into the library, it's very interesting because I've been to many other schools, of course, with watching the learners, etc. in the library. I don't often see the e-students, whatever you want to call them, doing silly stuff. They're often doing stuff. And in fact, I've got the very experience this year of an Ashburton student sort of letting me know of another Ashburton student who's perhaps not doing what they should be. So there does seem for some of them a level of maturity or a sense of sort of being in it together to some extent, which is quite interesting. So it's just how you develop that. What's curious is also a lot of centralised spaces, use of centralised spaces through this group here. And I know that would be the case for all the schools. But I think we've gone well over time, 12 minutes over time, and I'm usually keen to just limit to an hour, but I think we could delve so much deeper into some of these things than we have, or maybe we need a part 2. But I really, really appreciate everyone's input today, especially considering, once again, you've given more of your own time, and that's very, very much appreciated. But the neat thing about this is this video this will be a video soon, and we'll be able to share it widely and give everyone a sort of a view into sort of what it's like supporting students in this environment and how you promote it and the whole big deal, etc. So thanks very much. Has anyone got any last words at all? Not that you have to, but if you want to.
Well, I just want to stress the independent learning. I've had my own 2 children through the system, and they're now at tertiary study, and all the other students I know from Roxburgh who have gone on to further study, the skills they've gained through learning in this way, I can't reinforce enough. And I think if every student, like Anne says, in New Zealand had the opportunity to do a course in this way, they would be so much better off, probably leaps ahead in their first year of study, because they have the independent skills, they have the used to working and getting their work in an online environment. They can go into a learner management system, download their PowerPoints or whatever they need, and it has just made that transition for our students, which is a big transition to go from a small town to a large city, which is stressful enough for them, but the fact they've actually got this part of it sorted has really helped them move into that next stage of their life. And I'd love a study to be done on that, because I'm sure it would give us some very rich data. But we can only but wish. Santa Claus wishes in.
Thanks for that, Linda. I'll go for it. Thank you. Just leave if you need to. But yeah, I think the world is changing, and we need to prepare them for that world, and this does do that. Part of that world is going to be online and flexible and remote, and workers will be different, and my household's just one indication of that, so that's only going to increase, so make sure we give the students this preparation. So, sorry, Michelle.
I've got to go too, so it's been great to
finish up there.
Discussion. We've got parent-teacher issues.
I'll have fun with that. Thanks for coming along, Michelle. Thanks, everyone. I'll catch you later.
Darren, one last, you could do workshop 2 could actually be about the advantages for teachers. That would be actually, the whole development and because I think that a lot of us live in our little school, and we don't build up this network of community and experience with different students from different schools, let alone the online teaching aspect of it. It's rounds you out as a teacher. That's what I think, anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Marina. We will do that. Just a matter of sharing the load of it and ensuring it's not the same people coming in. I think we need a few boys next time. It was all women. I don't know what the deal is with that. But yeah, you're on mute, Linda, so I didn't hear what you said, so it's probably just as well being a boy myself. But right, thanks everyone.
I won't say.
But I think it's a great idea, Marina. I'll investigate that, so who we can organise this term. Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Darren.
Right.
Bye, everyone.